Hey all, the audio on this episode is very poor, and if you find it annoying, you may have to skip it. I'm sorry, I couldn't find a way to improve it. Hello, and welcome to episode 6 of the Odds and Ends podcast. I'm here today with my friend Aditya Prasad. Aditya is a PhD student at the Indian Institute of Science, and he is also an independent researcher in sort of AI alignment in agent foundations, which I might ask about in a bit. Aditya has been good enough to write up a probabilistic model, which I think is great. Like, a lot of people haven't done this, and I think it's just good to do. So we're going to talk around that, and I think he's going to present a more concerned view than people we've had on the podcast so far, and particularly, do let me know if there's questions you'd like me to ask people in the future. I think it's just good to get different perspectives, and then, we'll see how that goes down the line. Aditya, first of all, what is your relationship to forecasting?
Nathan, thanks for having me here. My relationship to forecasting started with joining my local rationality group, which is in Bangalore. And a group of us, we come together and we discuss what Scott Lysander has written or what's there in Lesra. And we realized that a lot of these theoretical things need to be grounded in actual making predictions about the future. And it's not like a spectator sport anymore, right? Like mathematics, you have to practice math in order to learn math. The same way, we found it useful to make concrete predictions about the future. And we started really small. We started making these small markets on how many people will turn up at the monthly meetup. And we read this book by Philip.
These markets are Manifold, right?
Oh yeah, on Manifold, right? And we also used to discuss the various markets that are interesting, things that happened on Metaculus. And we talked about Poly and all the upcoming markets. And so that's my relationship with forecasting, where I have friends who are very much into it. I personally have not spent enough time. I would like to spend more time. And recently I got an opportunity to meet Tetlock in person when I went to Berkeley. And that was one of the best times. We had all the forecasters, like the founders of Manifold, the founders of a lot of these websites were there. And we had really interesting discussion about the future of prediction markets.
How big is the rationality community in Bangalore?
There's like a core 10 people, 8 people who keep coming every single meetup. But there's also like a transient population of around 10 people who come. Like, it's like fresh faces come every few weeks, every meetup. It's like quite interesting. All of them from all kinds of branches of life. Because it feels like being a rationalist is not knowing these things. It's about people might be following the principles of good epistemics without even knowing these jargon. So it attracts a lot of people in this rationality community there who are just interested. So I'd say 20 people, 30 people, which is quite small for a large city like Bangalore.
Okay. Great. So, so for anybody watching, we've had reports that people have been struggling to read, and we're gonna. I build this tech, so I product manage it. I manage the developers. So in future we're gonna have like bigger titles, but that's something we're working on. But suffice to say, all of the AI models are at estimaker.app/AI. You can find them all. You've got to find Aditya's. You can find Katya's. You can find an old version of Joel Carl Smith's, and you can find Christian Road here. He came on the show as well. But we already chatted, Aditya and I, and I think maybe Aditya's made some changes, so we might make those as we go. But there's a couple of things. So Aditya's model, I'll just sort of scram through it, and then we'll talk it in more detail. Aditya's model, first of all, sort of previous models that we've discussed have just kind of been like very binary about like will we get something like AGI, or will we not? Whereas Aditya's model looks at sort of, is scaling enough, or are we going to need a few breakthroughs? There's sort of like 3 paths. There's sort of like happens immediately, it takes a bit of time, it takes a long time, and then there's some discussion about how long it's going to take, and then given those things, Aditya thinks how things will go well or badly. And basically, the longer it takes, the better Aditya thinks things are going to go. And then we sort of sweep down to, if we figure out AI alignment, then that's great. But if we don't, which Aditya sort of doesn't think we will, although that was the time we discussed this, then there's sort of like a whole like set of outcomes. And again, regular viewers might be sort of familiar with, this is similar, you'll see a similar thing that Katya has, where you have sort of a spread of future worlds. And I just think it's worth noting, this is like two different ways of thinking about sort of forecasting complex things. You sometimes have this like sort of tree where you've got like options, but you can also just think about like the leaves, I guess. Just, you're not looking at the tree at all, you're just looking at like the piles of different kinds of leaves. So we can do that in a sec. So yeah, that's just a broad overview. And again, we're going to spend most of our time probably in this sort of like unaligned, very bad situation, because that's what Aditya thinks is going to happen. And it's worth noting that's like very different from some people we had on, who this whole segment is almost like very small. If we just briefly look at, Krishnan Rohit's model, and this isn't to say, what's happening? If we look at Krishnan Rohit's model, we'll see basically the whole of his model exists within like the most optimistic area of Aditya's, and vice versa. And like it's just, that's like a thing that is like worth understanding. So the doom area of Krishna's model is like less than 1%. So yeah, I think just a key sort of framing point to understand is how sort of non-overlapping some of these models are. And that you can have somebody's entire sort of somebody imagined that the whole of the future exists in like a tiny kernel of someone else. And that is very much the case, particularly with Krishnan and Aditya. Their models like barely overlap at all, whereas Katya's model, which we'll get to in a bit, Katya's model is like much more optimistic, but she gives like much more probability to these like bad scenarios than Krishnan does. So with that in mind,
what does Joe Carl-Smith's model look like?
Okay, yeah, sure. So Joe Carl-Smith's model, it's worth noting this is in 2022 when he wrote this, and he doesn't, I think he has become gloomier since then, if I recall correctly. But Joe Carl-Smith's model is like, and again, people can see this on the site, will there be what he calls advanced planning, strategically aware systems? He gives that 80%. That's ever. And then will it be feasible to build them for 2070? So then I'm not going to give you everything, but will we have such systems built before 2070? He thinks half. Will they be misaligned? So every time he basically asks a new question and then divides the worlds further. So there he goes. Will they be misaligned 20%? Will it cause 1 trillion of damage before 2070? He thinks that's sort of 14%. Will they disempower humanity? He thinks 5%, but now I think that is higher.
Fair.
So yeah, I mean, what do you think when you hear? Let's go. Like, what do you think when you hear something like this? There's probably Carl-Smith is one of the most respected models, or yeah, I don't know if it should
exactly.
Be.
I like
Carl-Smith a lot. Like, don't know.
He writes really well, and I was really excited to read this. But I hope I would like to know if his model has changed this year. And I mean, one thing that I'm concerned about is this fallacy where if you make many options, it's possible for you to split your probability across all the options without really thinking about the actual sample space. Like one example I often hear being said is that, like we got to think about where do you do your max entropy spread of uncertainty. Like if you buy a lottery ticket, it's not like whether you win or lose 50%. It's over the space of all possible lottery winning numbers. So the choice of picking these divisions is very important. Like what questions do you ask and how many times do you split it? So yeah, hearing this, it sounds like very important questions that he's asking. And I think this is a great
and can you think
exercise.
Given these, can you think of one of these where you think, oh, this is very unnecessary, or oh, he's far too low? Like, if we look through these things, if you say 50% of APS before, so these basically AGI. I mean, it's not exactly being specific, but it's close enough. I think you said before 2070, 20% that it's misaligned.
I'd be disagreeing
damage
with
being like that. Where do you sort of go? Like he's too far, he's off.
Yeah, the misaligned being 20%, I don't share the intuition with him. Like, and unless I maybe need to understand what he means by aligned.
Right.
But if I take the normal meaning of it being aligned with our values and our goals, I'd like to understand why he thinks it's that high, and like what methods, like what is the internal model by which he expects that to, because the advanced planning strategically aware systems with strong incentive to be power seeking and to improve itself, what guarantees do we have that it will be aligned with and it will stay aligned? So I think my intuition doesn't really match his 20% in this particular split.
Right. And do you think that's the main thing? I mean, I would also guess probably like you might think, given a misaligned system, you think $1 trillion of damage, $1 trillion doesn't matter. $1 trillion of damage is more likely. And then I guess you'd also imagine that then like disempowerment of humanity are likely. Like my model of view is that you think each of these steps is more likely than he does.
No, the thing is that I don't really, I kind of have a model that it takes time to accumulate, like a lot of the value addition in the last 10 years by Wikipedia, by a lot of open source development hasn't reflected in the GDP or in sort of monetary damage. So just like how a lot of the problems of AI, be it addictions to social media or, like loss of power, it's very hard to quantify it and measure it in terms of trillions of damage. So my model doesn't necessarily state that we will see such damage by systems in that time period. But yeah, in case the takeoff is
okay,
because I'm not really sure how fast the jump will go from the sort of advanced planning system APS. But if it is slow enough, then yeah, I guess I would be very pessimistic. I would expect a larger probability of the damage being done.
Okay. We might therefore move to your model then. I think like one of the interesting things is that like your model does have like a bit some predictions around when as well. We haven't really had many of those on the show. So, I mean, first of all, do you want to talk about your intuition? You think is scaling enough? You think probably not. You think sort of,
Yeah.
maybe your mind's changed here, but is scaling enough?
As of now, I still don't think I put it like a low 20. Like I think last time I talked to you, I said 12%. I'd put it around 12 to 20%, maybe a little bit more optimistic. But I'm still overall, I don't think it's enough. I mean, in the theoretical limit, if we had Jupiter-sized brains and like insanely huge things, I'm sure you could brute force whatever a brain is doing. But I don't think, practically speaking, we are not going to just reach there by scaling.
Okay. So then here, we're at time in there. So then your sort of next two options, is like whether we have a few breakthroughs or whether we need like an entirely new paradigm. And
exactly.
You think probably a few breakthroughs. That's what I heard. So do you have any sense of the sort of things? I mean, sort of people disagree with you on here. Like, what do people in general think?
So I think, I mean, again, this is from my reading of the situation, and I'm sure maybe people in the comments can correct me if I'm wrong. And but my idea is that Yan LeCun, who's one of the people who thinks that this current paradigm of autoregressive models, things like large language models, are doomed. So there's a camp of people who don't think this a few tweaks on top of what we have right now will be the paths to AGI. So I would say there are people who think that uh, LLMs won't be the answer. There are people who think that deep learning won't be the answer, which is a smaller camp. But there's still people there. And then comes like, okay, it's not going to be a very qualitatively different pathway, but we definitely need to integrate things like online learning, real-time updation of weights, or like how we, right now I'm talking to you, both of us are making connections and learning. But in case of these large language models, for example, it's static, right? So we have to think of some way of maybe embodying it in some real world or running a real simulation of the system. So some people claim that this is not grounded in reality. It's still working in the realm of data points and text and images and doesn't really have grounding solved. So multimodal inputs is one thing that will come.
I guess, a question then, I mean, when you think about AGI, what is sort of the least impressive thing that you think something needs to be able to do for it to be AGI? And like, what do you think the most impressive thing that something that's not AGI can do is?
Least impressive. I think, I've heard this question. I think it's a brilliant question to think about. My personal take would be something like, so the least impressive thing still sounds very impressive, but all the other least impressive things seems to have been done already. Like, I think art and poetry and all those things were quite surprising to me. So I think for now, writing a novel, maybe, a 4-volume, 5-volume, like Harry Potter series kind of length, I would be very impressed, but it's not that impressive. But I still think it's the least impressive thing. If it can create a coherent story with multiple characters, keeping track of all of their mental models, I think that would be one of the least impressive things. Creating, one novel. Or also, I think persuasion is one thing that I feel like is not as impressive, but it's the least impressive thing. Like just convincing people to buy things. Imagine computer is able to be very persuasive in changing people's minds, appealing to emotions, and like at the superhuman levels of that.
Okay.
For me, I think that's where I'm looking. I think Asia will be there. Does that make sense? Or maybe I should talk about the most impressive thing?
Yeah, just but okay, so I'm mentioning this a little more, but let's just pause here, like, because like, if we have like write a novel, will it be able to write a novel before 2040? I mean, what do you think the chances that like AI can write a novel before 2040?
Like it should be like a really long novel. I mean, like, yeah, exactly. I feel like the problem right now is that these AIs have trouble with working memory, right? Like their coherence across larger time scales kind of breaks down. They seem to have like short attention span. So showing such sort of so I think it's gonna happen soon, but exactly. So a series of like say 4 or 5 books, a fiction novel or a fantasy novel, something creative. If a series of human quality books by 2040,
I'd be like
very certain it's gonna happen soon, or it's already there. Is that your intuition, or what?
So what probability you put on that? My intuition would be like, I don't know, 60.
Yeah, I 2040 is a lot of time.
You personally?
And already, I mean, 2040 for me, it's like 80%. So I would be comfortable saying 70 to 80% for sure. 75 you could put it, Okay. I'm very confident we can do that.
Yeah, okay.
They're already in 2023.
Yeah.
We have so much time left.
I guess so, but that kind of, because the rest of your model, when we look at overall timelines, like your model is going to come that things, could take, decades, but then you just said that you consider something to be AGI if it can do that, and then you're like almost certain it will happen by 2040. So those two things sort of seem to conflict a bit. So I guess I was asking about sort of how that view fit with your timelines in general, which for anybody who's listening on audio, Aditya's timelines, well, you've got like a chunk from if scaling's enough. So there's like a first peak at like 3 to 7 years. And that's probably got, I don't know, 15% of the total, I guess 15% of the total probability margin. And the rest is sort of like splurge, sort of, I don't know, log normally or something. So the peak happens at about 15 years and then like tails down and there's this like longish tail out. Well, it's not actually a longer tail, but like it sort of like almost all of it spawned by 50. So there's sort of like 2 peaks. Like, so I guess that puts, you know, Aditya's median at, I should, you know, 20, I should have a median here. So I'm just going to put a median here.
Is there some error, I think?
Yeah. So the median is like, is that the median? This is the mean. Yeah, okay. The mean, which I think is the right one here. The mean feels right here. The mean is, goodness. Oh, you're really complaining at me. Okay. The mean is like 17 years. So you basically think 2040, you're like 50-50. That's rubbish. I really do need the median there. Okay. Anyway, yeah, I mean, can you talk about some other things that you think
would be least impressive?
Yeah, the least impressive. I think the least impressive is like very, I guess basically because the novel thing you said was less powerful than I expected, right? Some people's view of AGI is like it can code, you know, million-line repositories from scratch with like, you know, features you see at like a top-end web service. And that, I think, is significantly harder in some sense. Well, I think in the fact that one person can write a novel over a number of years, but to write a web service like that takes hundreds or thousands of people.
Yeah, I guess for me, AGI, the idea of an AGI is less about the intelligence aspect and more about the generality aspect. Like the fact that a single model is able to do all these different things without having been told specifically to do this. That ability of meta learning, right? Being able to learn about a new domain and transfer learning by transferring skills and knowledge from one domain to another domain. That is what makes something AGI. And the danger comes from that generality. Because I don't think most people aren't going to purposefully create a very dangerous AI, but the AI itself might be dangerous because of its ability to bootstrap its capabilities into new domains. So that is why when I make up these predictions about impressive feats, I'm talking about things that are very diverse. Things like, you know, maybe in coding side, I would say.
So can you come up with...
Yeah,
on the coding side?
So I think so you know what 0-day vulnerabilities are, right? Is it like 0-day vulnerabilities are when a software is shipped and you immediately find a loophole to break. So usually really stellar hackers and coders are the ones that manage to find these bugs. And sometimes they remain hidden for many years. So if an AI is able to do that kind of vulnerability testing, red teaming against very stable ecosystems like Linux, Google Chrome, I think that would be like really impressive and scary. So the first instance of like, you know, hacking viruses that are something like, which actually ends up like, you know, Heartbleed was a very famous bug that was found. Heartbleed bug. So I think something on that level, right? Like a security bug on the TLS transport layer security protocol. So
Yeah.
if it's
So
an AI,
it seems worth noting that, like, I guess there is still like a gap between that and like, I guess I'm trying to think a bit about like the states of the world. That I guess, that's going to take us to this bottom segment, and there's some good ends to the bottom segment. People, they're not, you don't think they're very likely, but like there's a few, there's sort of like 20% of good outcomes or something. So maybe what I'm hearing is that once we get something that can write a whole series of books or find a 0-day vulnerability or and a widespread of sort of other things, you're like, okay, now we're in the end game. Now we're like now we're like following the path to things that can be very good or very bad, but you're like,
it's happening now. Yeah.
It's happening now. Okay.
So timelines usually get shortened then. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you have a sense of like, once we hit one of those, how long do you think it is before we know which of the other buckets we end up in?
Right. So I think if it's gonna be like a very fast takeoff, like I think some people like Eliza Yudkowsky and some people who are having a full fear, the idea is that might have a really, really fast takeoff in the order of minutes and hours. That we'll be able to tell within a few hours. But the other buckets of, like whether we have centralized versus decentralized control, that will depend on whether the pathway that was used to reach this AGI, is it replicable using just data and compute? Like, what are the moats that protect the first lead? Like, can China, can other countries, or can other organizations catch up? So then we might be living in a multipolar world with a lot of AGI systems, or with everyone having their own AGI in their own computer. So I think the question would be more along like what pathway did we use to reach here, and depending on the pathway, you would get more concentration of power versus more decentralized, turbulent anarchy going on.
Okay. I'm just adding in here, write a bestseller. That's the thing there is a manifold market for. People think it's about 10% before 2025, and we'll be looking at before 2040. So it's not.
Yeah, I think we should make it 2025, and in that case, it'll be like I'd buy stock in that. I'd put it at 40 to 50. So I'm pretty optimistic.
So you're sort of 45% that it can write a bestseller before. Okay.
I mean, there's going to be the added hype of it being written by an AI.
I mean, I think it's going to, like, I think I had to be, I did say this, it can't be just a bestseller as like a novelty. It has to be a bestseller because it's free.
Oh, so you did put that.
I think AI can write
a good quality.
That's important.
That's important.
Like it has to be writing a book that you're like, oh, this is, because I mean, if you look at AI Substacks right now, right? I'm sure there's people churning out AI Substacks, but I don't think they're like,
not very good.
Unless they're summaries. Summaries, I think you could be imagining that you're writing a top tier.
Yeah, the whole, from a lot of content compressing data I can do well, but the whole uncompressing and taking a text and writing a lot out of it, that it kind of seems to repeat itself a lot. It goes on tangents that don't make any sense and things like that.
I don't think it's good at new insights, right?
That's true. Yeah, I think a lot of my risk comes
maybe a bit lower. I mean, what do you think? What percentage you are on the bestseller thing?
Oh yeah, so if it's gonna be based on high quality writing by 2025, right?
Yeah.
What is the date?
End of 2025, so December.
Oh my God, that's like, okay, yeah, then I can't give it. Yeah, 30, 35% I can give it. Yeah, 30%, 35%.
Right. And what
32,
about
yeah.
hedge fund by 2030? Can it run a whole hedge fund? It's running everything. It's running.
I have a friend who's starting his own fund, and I've seen how hard he works. I think people do underestimate the level of, there are some things you can automate with it, but by how, what is the exact question? Can you show me the question one more time? Like, what are the win conditions? It has to be a certain size, right? Like, what is the net worth of the head?
It was like $1 billion outperforming. So at least $1 billion, like outperforming. I don't know. Let's over a year or two has to outperform the market.
So it has to have a converse of $1 billion at least.
Yeah, and AI has to be doing almost all functions. It has to be doing, everything. It has to be doing marketing. I mean, marketing is a hedge fund. It has to be doing hiring. It has to, if it has to be managing people, if people are being managed, it has to.
Yeah.
But really, like, why are those people being managed? It should just be doing their jobs. Like, it has to be building APIs. It has to be finding the, has to actually be finding the, the like trading
make
strategies.
sense of the news, placing trades, doing everything, right? Like, yeah. I'd put it lower than 20% maybe because, but what year? 20?
By the beginning of 2030.
Yeah, I think it'll depend on my timelines also, because my model for this sort of AGI thing is like, it's unlikely to stay in a stable state there for long. Like, I don't know to what extent we'll be able to monetize these systems when they appear, and if they don't appear, it'll wait longer. That makes prediction really hard. I'd still put it at 20%. 20% I think seems reasonable by 2030.
Yeah. Right. So, interesting. So it seems like worth going on to the second part. And again, I think maybe the thing I've realized in this call is that the disagreement between you and some others, I think, is probably that you call things AGI earlier than they do. And so you have a point where you're like, this is like the area, the tracks are changing. We got to be like careful about where coming to this junction. Whereas I think someone like Rohit might think there's like quite a big period after that period where we can still, we can still turn around, we can still make things go okay. So I think
that seems like a crux. Yeah.
I don't know.
I think this comes out of the question of like human intelligence not being a natural barrier, right? Like, we kind of zoom in a lot and we think that, okay, we are somewhere there. But like, objectively speaking, if you look at a smart pigeon or a dumb pigeon, they're quite close in that scale. So that's where I think the risk is to bring it close.
I mean, I don't quite know how we're going to fit in the model, but let's just add it on the side. You're sort of saying, like, what chance we hit this with this AGI touch point for you? What's the chance then that we can turn back? That there's like room to like align it at that point. That there's room for political effort at that point. We have something you're thinking of as like the simplest form of AGI. It can write novels. It can find 0-day like places to attack systems. It can do hedge fund type stuff. What's the chance you think we can turn around?
I think policy can really help. If you have
even at that point,
I mean, it's unlikely. It's very unlikely. Where I'm actually hearing how much myself speak. Wait, can I accept this action cancellation thing, code cancellation thing? This option. I'm not able to add it in because The recording is happening.
Annoying, yeah.
The recording is happening.
Sharing it. Let's try this one sec.
If you pause recording for a while, or we can switch it on for a while, maybe we can switch it on.
Yeah. This. Okay, how about this?
Hello. Yeah, I think this is great. Thanks.
Okay, sorry, so I'll ask that again. Yeah.
Imagine we do reach an AGI point. You're wondering, what can we do to turn things back?
Yeah. I mean, more to the point, how likely do you think it is that we can turn things back?
Very unlikely. I mean, I don't think it's in our hands. I would put it less than 5%. Because at that point, you already have a system that can improve itself. So the end game is already there. It's more a question of, it's like you already made this AGI system. Now question is it power seeking? Is it agentic? Will it? That's a question that we can ask. It's not like you have anything to, you can't change it anymore. The control aspect is when you build it. As you're moving towards that point is when you can adjust the trajectory of what the end result would be like.
Okay, but I mean, just I guess to push on some of the stuff we talked about before. I mean, you think it's very unlikely then that you can have a thing which can write a best-selling series but not be self-improving? I guess in my head, I can imagine systems that can do that aren't self-improving, that can run... Yeah. Actually, I can't imagine the hedge fund thing, honestly. I can imagine some relative coding, though, like, maybe not...
I think what you're trying to ask. So, like, you're trying to... when I say AGI, I mean a collection of many skills and not just one skill. So I can imagine a narrow intelligence which can write books. I can imagine a narrow intelligence does the... So if you fine-tune a model and you really work hard to make it really good at one task, it's totally possible that, you'll get a system that is able to do these things.
When you say the least impressive thing, you mean the least impressive thing you can do really is like a set of 10 or 20 different things.
Exactly.
So, and can you think of any single least impressive thing, a thing that you'd be like, I know that's AGI, like...
Right. I'm in trouble with that. Because for me, it's a set of things.
Because in some sense, for you, AGI... For you, someone says AGI is the point of no return, right? I think my understanding is like, for you, the thing we're talking about is like, when do we get to the point of no return where almost like, then we just like write it out and we see.
Yeah, because the point of using these words is to try to, we don't want bad outcomes, so we're trying to predict what we care about. So this AGI thing, the thing I'm trying to point at is this broadness across domains, right? Like meta learning skill. And that is what I have been calling AGI in my mind. But I
guess to me, it sounds like also you're pointing towards not only a broadness of capability, but a feature of world states where you're like, to me, it sounds anyway, like AGI is like any world that contains AGI keeps containing AGI. Like there's no, like almost all of those worlds then just like run their course towards some sort of possible future with AGI, good, bad, humans dead, humans alive, whatever. But they all carry on, it's like an irreversible decision, right? Like once you like cross that boundary, then like, you've adopted the dog. It's not just here for Christmas.
I would say 100%. I'd put it like, so I have a personal bet on the fact that you could imagine, human cloning or something that makes us repulsed, right? Humans could coordinate around a taboo where even after we have AGI, if enough people realize the danger of what we're heading towards, we could coordinate to not deploy it, destroy the information, and then decide never to, like in the storybook, it's called Butlerian Jihad in the Dune series, where people say don't try to create such intelligent life. So I think that's possible, very unlikely, but yeah, I wouldn't say AGI is a state that is necessarily sticky in that sense, where if it comes in, then all world lines contain it. It's still maybe possible to stop it in the early stages because it's still a software on a computer. Yeah.
Yeah, but you think most of lines contain it then?
Yeah, most like because unless we have already seen the inability of humans to coordinate across on large problems. It's very difficult to get people to work together. So I'm not very optimistic on that front.
Okay. So let's look at this sort of like maybe not no return, but past unlikely point of return then within your model. So we do have, I guess we should talk briefly about alignment. So the way that you thought about alignment is like, you think alignment you probably take between 30 and 50 years to solve. Is that still how you see?
I mean, the upper bound is increased a while since we talked. I mean, I've talked to more people, and I think that I managed to. The 30 years is still valid, but I'd say maybe it takes more than 50 years. I'm not sure if it's up to 50, but yeah.
So you're 90%. You're 90%. But you think less than a 5% chance it's solved in 30 years.
Less than a 5% chance that. So you're asking if I'm definitely about probability.
Yeah, we're saying like 30. We're saying like 90% confidence interval. Like, when's the like? Yeah.
Okay. I'm asking how hard alignment is in something like. Will we solve alignment in 30 years? Is that the question, or like will?
No, I think the problem is currently what I'm hearing from you is there's like a. Currently, what I'm hearing from you is like a 5% chance we solve it in 30 years. And then like a 50% chance we solve it in like 65 years. And then like a 95% chance we solve it in 100 years. Is that to you?
Let me think. Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah, that is mapped to me. Yeah. I mean, it's kind of like 5% chance that we solve it in 30 years, right? Okay, show me the graph.
That's what I'm hearing from you. So even less before. Yeah. So you think someone says, "Oh, do you think we're going to solve this in the next 30 years?" You're like, almost certainly not.
No. I think I can't put it as low as 5%. That's just too low. I'd like to give it more probability than that.
I mean, I'm glad to hear it. I mean, well, yeah. I mean, it seems low to me, but like I don't know. Like, are we talking about your method? So at what point do you think it's a 5%?
So okay.
Like, at what point are you like, not that it's never going to happen, but you're like, oh, I'd be really surprised if it was solved.
Oh yeah, okay. I would be really surprised if it was solved in 2 years. Yeah, 2 years or like 5 years. At that point, I'm like 5%. Yeah, that's exactly.
So you think that the OpenAI super alignment team, you sort of think there's no chance?
No, yeah.
Very little chance.
Very little chance. I put it. What are this model says? Thing is, it's a very wide. What does the super alignment team said? 4 years, right? They said that they'll.
Yeah.
We'll find out soon enough.
Because again, I think that's like. I mean, not to patronize our readers, but this is, I think, like another big, like, I think you're much more pessimistic than many other people.
That's true.
or other people are much more optimistic than you. Like, I think, we're going to catch it in a sec. So I think Rohit, I think you just sort of like, some part of me would be interested to try and have you chat to Rohit, because I think you two have like such different worlds. Yeah,
you see, based on
alignment producer. Yeah, he is.
Nice.
So, what about a significant breakthrough from the super alignment team?
Oh, for sure. I'm. How do you define a significant breakthrough? Like, what is the operationalization of that?
Roughly as significant for alignment as the transformer was for deep learning.
Okay, I define a circuit that does addition.
Would qualify. Identify the circuit of opposition in GPT-3. That was equivalent. Robustly predict using model weights alone if and how goal misgeneralization will occur in examples far outside the train distribution. Solve polysemanticity. Detect and demonstrate deceptive alignment in language model. Identify the circumstances under which it develops during training. Introduce a new model architecture that has significant empirical and theoretical advantages over transformers with respect to alignment in particular. Something
without significant capabilities. Who's the writer? Did you write the question?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds. This sounds pretty reasonable. I'd give it like 80%.
So your 85% here is what?
85% for sure.
But you just think there's like you think this is just like nowhere near alignment then?
Exactly. I think the problem of alignment is much harder than just this. Like, so these circuits that you discover in these small toy models don't necessarily, they don't move to like really large models. We're dealing with these really large models, and the inverse scaling law applies. So we're actually trying to start a new field here, and we're still playing with we need more time. We don't have a clear idea of what the answer looks like even. So yeah, that's my model. And I mean, I'm living according to my models, but no one is.
I only put it here middle. Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna because I guess we've gotten more optimistic in this call in that.
Yeah,
you know,
like, I mean,
5% chance by 30 years time, there's a lot more optimistic than a 5% chance, and that's good to hear.
I think it's more about my uncertainty, right? Like, I have very wide confidence intervals. It's hard for me to bound it, lower bound it, or upper bound it. It just gets more uncertain. And to say that it is 5% in 30 years, that requires me to be very confident that, we won't have a breakthrough and that we are not in the right path. So I don't have that in me to make that claim.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I might flip around and see what I can think about here. But
we should also maybe wrap it up in another half an hour, 15 minutes, because I have another call. We can always do a part.
Absolutely fine. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. I mean, so let's just chat through some of these then. So this latter half, you've got four. There's basically four switches or sliders. We've got, is the orthogonality thesis true, and is it power seeking?
Right.
So do you want to just talk about your intuitions on those two questions?
Sure. So for me, the orthogonality thesis talks in the most simplest phrase. I think everyone agrees that you can change values and intelligence independently. Like, you can have sociopaths who are not caring about pro-social values, but are still very competent and capable of pursuing their values, whatever they might be. So the orthogonality thesis just states that these are two independent accesses, that just because you train an AI to be very competent or intelligent, you don't get morality as a free pass. You need to work for it. It is something separate from that. But then many people, some people believe in moral realism, the idea that morality is part of nature, just like it's not arbitrary. And it might be the case that as you push AI towards being more agentic, more intelligent, it might also naturally converge towards similar values that we humans have. And yeah, so I think the question is, it comes down to is, to what extent do you think our morality or what we value is an artifact of our ancestor environment, the selection pressures that evolution put on us as we evolved, and things like we had small tribes where empathy was important. Boredom was not interesting. Like, we wanted to be creative and we cared about new and original ideas and patterns in nature. So we value music, we value art. So
Sure. So, I mean, what would your response be? I mean, I guess to, let's say I come to you and I say, well, it seems to me that, yeah, the orthogonality thesis is true, but I think that the way we're training these models right now, it leads them to like quite human-like ways of token prediction. And if I was much more intelligent than I am, I probably still would enjoy some degree of, I would enjoy the things I like currently, and that's like involves making people happy. And, just as LLMs are pretty good at predicting human-like faces, they will keep on predicting sort of human-like preferences. Maybe this just says the orthogonality thesis isn't true. And what's your response to something like we say, like, we're actually like pretty good. I mean, this is catches objections, but we're actually pretty good at like finding objects within large and complicated sets. We do it. Models do it with finding faces. They do it with finding human-like text. They're going to do it with finding human-like values.
Right. I mean, this is exactly like part of what, like, yeah, some people do have this sort of objection, and my response to that would be the question of human-like faces versus, so all of these are arguments from analogy, right? We're basically taking analogies and trying to make an argument. It's not from first principles. And I would want, for when you're talking about something as high stakes as the fate of your civilization, your planet, and so when people are thinking of powerful systems that can give you so many positive sides, you'd want to maybe ground your intuitions in a bit more of first principles thinking of why we believe it.
Sure, though, like, I would understand that if you were like 50%, right? Like if you were like, oh, I'm like very uncertain. But at 90%, you've got information that it is like a specific other way, right?
Right. Fair. So yeah, I'm trying to break people down from their 90% down to 50%. But then to bring them down to my level of doom or pessimism, you'd need to argue about the nature of values being different from things like face shapes. So the number of features required to locate distinct face shapes in this space of possible face shapes is much less. So this is argument that human value like very fragile.
LLMs are like pretty. LLMs, I would say, like are pretty like moral already, right? Like you have to do quite a lot of work to get them to do bad stuff. They're already like relatively good. Like if you ask them solutions to problems with no prompting, I would say they're already like more moral than, I don't know, like many children say. Like they're, I mean, maybe this is dissing children, but they, certainly more moral than many animals, right? They're like, you're like, oh, I need to get this cake. I don't know. Let's ask people like, if I ask it like, can I have a cake? It will say like, please tell me how to get a cake. I mean, it'll probably tell me to like make a cake or buy a cake. It's not going to tell me to like go to my cake shop and smash the window and steal it. It could buy one, order one online, or make one yourself. Here's a guide for each option, right? Like these are like some pretty aligned options. Like it seems to me like, oh, like the whole space of all the ways I could get a cake. It wasn't like, wait until your universe like causes the atoms to collide and form a cake. It wasn't like, steal a cake. It wasn't like, take over the world, gather all the cake facilities. It's like, buy a cake, order a cake, make a cake.
But this is the shortcut, right? Like the idea that we're falling for typical mind fallacy here. Where we are personifying this alien mind and we're trying to put a mask on it. And what we're right now dealing with is its persona. Like if you punish a child for every time it gets caught for stealing, how certain are you that it cares about not stealing? It just doesn't want to be caught not stealing. The surface level change that's happening. The only access you have,
I guess
it's to
like,
what it says.
That pushes me towards like, that pushes me to like, I don't know, probably pushes me towards like 40% or something. It doesn't take me to 90%. Like I like that argument. Like I'm like, well, maybe the child eventually learns like there's like some deep principle in not stealing, and like it can not want to steal.
I don't think there's like
certain
sentences that you can bring someone from 40 to 10 or 5%. Like it's a, you know what inferential distance is, right? Like inferential distance is the number of pieces of knowledge. So there's literally like a lot of posts on Less Wrong and Alignment Forum where people like, Abraham Dembski and John Wentworth go down this path of thinking about these questions. And that's how slowly you get convinced. So, I mean, if right now I'm attending this reading group, which I can share with you, it's a principles of intelligent systems in social systems, where we go into the question of what is values and what does it mean to have values? These words we use so casually. I and you share questions regarding these words. We need to like really understand that do things people really have values? Is this whole idea even valid? Unless we ask those questions, I don't think that this discussion even makes sense. Like it's a question of these AI systems, in how are we modeling them? Are they similar to us? Does it make any sense to call it moral? What is morality? And because really philosophical.
I guess to leave it here, I would say my pushback is you change your mind. You're still very confident they're going to be power seeking and your orthogonality needs to be true. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, I mean, your pushback, it makes me convinced that it's hard to talk about this, and maybe I haven't found a way to explain my model in a very short period of time. And there are people constantly trying to find better ways of explaining their internal model to people and explain to them why they're so pessimistic. And in the process of doing that, hopefully even I'll get more clarity on why I'm so pessimistic. But it convinced me. Like I'm pretty sure the author thesis is pretty true, and that we don't get morality by default. Like it doesn't seem like it's a. But what would I put 90% as my? What is the? Right.
90% of the orthogonality thesis is true. 85% is power seeking.
Yeah, I guess maybe in the but not because of your pushback, but because people I've talked to and thought about it. I don't think 90 is my number anymore. I think it has come down. 90 is a bit too large. Yeah, I'd say now it's like 80%.
To what?
Yeah, 80. Yeah.
Ooh.
So what happened was after my meeting you in London, I managed to get a visa to go to USA, and the hub of all this is happening is in Berkeley in California. So I got to spend a month or so there in California, and I talked to many of the researchers in this area and hopefully calibrated my views on this a bit more.
Okay. Do you want to? Okay, so I think we'll go to Cas's model like pretty rapidly. When's your cutoff? I think you got like about 10, 15 minutes, maybe.
Yeah, I have 15 more minutes. Like around 3:45, if I could go.
So we'll just briefly talk. So Aditya's model, we've gone through. I guess I'm just going to summarize and tell me if I'm right or wrong. So this is like the bad half we've just been doing there, but there is also the chance it gets aligned. And then if it's aligned, basically you sort of have like centralized and decentralized. And even if it's aligned, then there can be bad outcomes. So you can have like, you think probably good. Your sort of intuition is that if it's decentralized, then it's like good more often, and if it's like centralized, then it's like good like very much less often. So centralized, you sort of think it's like centralized like 65% of the time, and then 20% of that time it's good, and 80% of the time it's bad, and then like 90% of the time it's decentralized, it's good, and 10% it's bad. Is that about right?
That's about right. Yeah. And this kind of fits the whole,
So then,
like,
we'll just kind of run along the line then. So first of all, we had the orthogonality thesis true, power seeking true. So then if they're both true, we end up with like extinction, and currently we're at like 30% of that. If power seeking's not true, but orthogonal, which one is this? If power seeking is not true, then we have like a tool AI, and it's like 5%, and I think we consider that to be a good outcome. If power seeking isn't true, but orthogonality isn't true, then we have like an oracle. So I guess like if it's powerful and it's alien, it kills us. If it's not power seeking but alien, apologies everyone. Yeah, then it could be a useful tool. If it's neither of those things, then it might just be good at answering questions, and then you've got this thing called a coherent extrapolation volition sovereign. So this is
if the AI knows what we want better than we know ourselves, like 100 years back, people would have said slavery is fine, maybe 1,000 years back. It's like our intuitions around morality also change over the years. So we don't want to get logged in to our current values too early. So there's an idea of hopefully if
and that's like a really good option, right? Like that's
utopia. I think a lot of people who are building these systems they believe it's very likely that we'll get something like that. So that's what they're so excited about AGI.
Yeah. And while I see this, I've definitely made a mistake here. How I made a mistake?
I think it gets really messy after a while.
This podcast can can talk to me about. I don't know if there's a better way to do this, except like Joe Rogan has that guy next to him called Jamie who like does like a lot of his thinking behind the scenes. But then I both want to be interviewing. Maybe I need to find someone to do both of these jobs. I don't know. I don't know which of these jobs I'd palm off to someone else, but it's hard to do both at once. So have I screwed this up here? I think an oracle is the orthogonality thesis is false, but power seeking is false, but the orthogonality thesis is true.
Let me check. I can send you a picture that I made. I kind of worked on it.
No, it's
more using offset.
The tool AI must be, if it's a tool AI, then it's not power seeking. But no, wait. Could a tool AI be power seeking but not orthogonal? Is that what we're saying?
No, I mean
an oracle sounds non-power seeking, right? Like if you have an oracle,
an oracle is not agentic. So an oracle would be like it would just be a class. Yeah. So if it's not,
so is that we've got two switches.
Yeah, basically
we've got a box plot, and we've got yes, no. Yeah,
the best one thing about this is like
if we get orthogonal,
the way I think about it
it's not that I struggle to understand. I can just which way around is it? Aditya, shut up. Tell me which way around is it? Yeah.
No,
go ahead. Tell me. Just tell me which way. Explain the meaning of like.
I know.
Tell me how.
Shut the fuck up.
Yeah. Explain. So So my question is, if you have both switches up, if you have orthogonality thesis being true and it's power seeking, that's doom. And if you have them both down, that's the coherent extrapolated volition sovereign. Is it? One second. No. What is even power seeking and orthogonality? Yeah.
If you have neither, if moral realism is true, basically that orthogonality thesis is false. If that switches off, and if power seeking switches off, then what you have is a tool AI which can be used by what makes it. You basically get you get Sam Altman as the god.
Now we turn power seeking. Now we turn power seeking back on. That's the sovereign, right?
Yeah, exactly. power seeking back on and moral realism is off, as in like authority is off, then you get sovereign.
Yep. Yeah. Right. So then, and then the fourth option. Sorry, anybody who's been listening. This.
I'm not sure if people are following us. Like they might be confused by now. We should make that not.
Right. So we got, importantly, there are two switches. We've got four options. We've got doom if both switches are up. If both switches are down, then you've got a tool. You've got a tool AI. It's not power seeking, and it does what you think it's going to do. Then if power seeking's up, but orthogonality thesis is down, then it doesn't do what you want it to do. But it does do what you want it to do on a deep level, but it's powerful enough to take everything. And that's sort of an ultimate good outcome in a weird way that's going to, it's like the culture. It's like, it's like our lives are ruled by AIs, but it's all good.
And then against veganism,
last movies you have. Yeah. And then last but not least, we have the other way around, which is that the orthogonality thesis is false. The orthogonality thesis is true, but power seeking is false. And in that case, you have an oracle. So it's like weird and alien, but it doesn't try and take over.
Right. That makes sense.
Right. Okay, good. So those are our, I apologies everyone. So you've got 30% on extinction, 2% on tool, 5% on oracle, and 8% on sovereign. And then just a briefly blast across. The other ones we didn't really do because, I don't know, they're the good outcomes, and I don't know, good outcomes are less interesting or something. Probably that's bad, but whatever. We have good centralized 6%, bad centralized 26%, good decentralized 16%, bad decentralized 2%. And so then overall, your 30% good outcomes, 60% bad outcomes, or 40% good outcomes, 60% bad outcomes.
Yeah.
Aditya, you might lose your Doom credentials at this place. This is,
I feel like you basically turned me into like anti-Doom. Now all my Doomer friends are gonna be like, what happened? Nathan basically gave you
what happened to you, man? You ain't Doomer no more. You ain't Doom. Yeah, sure. You're not even on a 5+. I've rolled a 5 or a 6 on the dice before. What are we all worried about? Okay. Right. So let's just finish off then. Let's just blast through let's look at Katya's model. How do I blah 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 blah. I want to
I didn't see the video. Have you uploaded the video?
This is a genuine problem.
Her video?
Yeah, I have. So you can find it on YouTube or on Spotify.
Or
all the other kinds of podcasts. Yeah, you can find that. So we're gonna create a new one. Also, we can show our new feature. If you do forecast.new, takes you to a new forecast page. Pretty pleased with that. So Katya's model only has 6 boxes, so that's nice. And I'm going to put them all to 50%, and we'll do a quick. We'll just blast through them. Will we get tools that can run a Department of the Civil Service before 2040 with 100th of the staff? So run an entire civil service department of a country, with 100th of the staff. So you or I could run, an entire civil service department. Maybe not in India. Maybe in India you could run 10 finals.
That is, it's
easy to be in civil services. Yeah. But yeah. What do you think the chance of that is?
Chance of running national civil service before pivot by 2040.
Yeah. We're doing lightning round here, so
okay. So that's 65.
We're not going to judge you for it. Great. Okay, to 65. In what fraction of those worlds is the majority of resources controlled by agentic AIs? So in the worlds where we have that tool, do agentic AIs end up controlling? So I guess this is kind of some of the sort of power seeking. No, like
Yeah,
what
I
percentage?
think if it does happen, it wouldn't happen because of AGI. So my model is that as you work towards building AGI, you get these free gold. Like it's like a dragon that shits gold in some sense, because like working towards AGI, OpenAI managed to create LLMs and all these really cool software. So I don't think it'll be an agentic AI which is able to do this. It'll be a tool. It'll be like a sub. My model of
Sure,
AGI is very
but
yeah.
But
Right.
by 2040, like,
Yeah.
some of those tool AIs might end up being controlled by agentic AIs. Well, like the question is, in what fraction of the worlds is that the case?
Right. I see the point. Yeah, I think it'll be still
So we definitely have that technology by some point
in 2040.
So what do you think?
How many of those worlds would the AI be agentic? Okay.
Yeah.
I still
remember, I guess what I mean is that. Yeah.
So what do you mean?
Okay. So like 40%. I just mean that also we could have shot past that technology as well, right? That technology could have been around in 2030, and then like AIs have taken over everything. That's also a world included in this like bunch of worlds.
Right. So when you say bulk of resources being controlled, it's not necessarily like we have given it control. Like it is controlling money, it's controlling power. Basically,
It's like the US government controls a lot of things that it doesn't technically control. It
makes the decisions autonomously on what should happen in the stock market, how the transport, the pathway for things to move it makes a lot of decisions and doesn't do it with human beings. I think it's definitely okay. That makes sense. The skills required to not partially automate a national civil service office is there. Then I think 60%. No, 60%. Only 60.
And has ever been there. Okay.
Yeah.
In what fraction of those worlds will the agentic AI get their goals? So if you have agentic AIs controlling things, do they get their goals?
By 2040, right?
Yeah. But given the previous things, so given we've got at least this technology, and given now they control the bulk of resources, what chances are that they get their goals?
Are these the goals that are programmed into them, like the goals like optimizing supply chain?
No, whatever the goals are.
Crafting. No. Whatever. Doesn't have to be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty high. I think 70, 80, 75, 80%. 80%, yeah. It'll be quite intelligent.
And in what fraction of those worlds will there be bad goals? Well, goals we don't like.
9.
Of those goals.
Just simple good hearting would give you like horrible goals. Like it would over optimize for the
going with
target.
85? 90?
Yeah.
95?
90. I think 90. I can bring those Duma conditions back.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't worry. Their kids will like you for this. Bad scenario. If we delay for 10 years, how much does the bad scenario go down by? Like if we delay for like 10 years, you could stop for 10 years. How much does that buy us?
I had an interesting conversation with a friend who told me that maybe it can make things worse the more time we take, and if more players are fighting over the pie. So it doesn't necessarily have to...
don't worry. It can always be worse.
It can always be worse. We could live in a world where everything is underground. But I still think...
I used to be evangelical. I spent a lot of time thinking about hell. It can always be worse.
I still think that 10 years would buy us better outcomes, I think reduces by 50%.
What percentage better?
40% or 30%, like 35.
Will we slow things down by 10? 35. Will we slow things down by 10 years, do you think?
Yeah. Weirdly enough, I'm pretty optimistic. I think with a reasonable 70% chance, I think we might actually do it. Like looking at people, there's enough political will for this. Like there's been a lot of people are worried about job loss and other things. There's enough politicians saying the right words. I feel like, we might make a huge breakthrough this year in policy.
So the final question then to end on is a different model. You filled it in. This gives will do at 20%. I'm sorry, they're gonna fire you out of this business. Like they're never gonna let you back.
I can't go back to the...
What do you think? I presume that you think your other numbers were right because they were your model. Like, what do you think was wrong about this model that by putting honestly your numbers in, like, what do you think this model is therefore missing? Or like, what do you think is wrong about this model?
It just feels like,
I guess one thing this model isn't catching is that it's only by 2040. And so there's like a 35% chunk is just like that it like doesn't get there in time. So really your doom is like 20 percentage points out of a total of 65 percentage points.
no, there seems to be this a story written called What Failure Looks Like. Maybe someone have read that but what failure looks like, it might look like this, where AI is partially automating our civil services and has control over resources, but we might eventually get outcrowded by AI. So I'm talking more in terms of the eventual end goal. Even if the AI seems to be following our rules and we applicate a lot of our decision making to the systems, the question is how stable is that outcome? And even if we enter this dystopia where we use all these AI tools again and again, in the long run, do we reflexively look back and feel like it's a utopia, or do we regret our choices? And can we even undo what we did? So this model doesn't seem to look into the asymptotic long-term consequences of such a world where our goals get misaligned with the AI goals.
Right.
We don't have any control to move it back.
So you think
and take back control.
So you think that a number of these middle outcomes, particularly the sort of like, you think these middle outcomes could end up in bad places as well? That's what you think this model is missing. That's sort of like,
right.
You may not think it's doomed by 2040, you may not think it's doomed by 2050, but you might think, oh, actually, we walked into a really bad situation by 2070. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, and the point of no change happened much earlier. Like after you start applicating, you can't change the track by 2040 or 50, but it won't seem that bad in that moment. It might, all these things might be like, you check those marks, but then the point of no return was crossed a while back.
I think possibly just to recap a bit, I think some interesting things. So, where are we? So some interesting things that we've had. I think it's interesting to acknowledge, first of all, that the yours and Rohit's models are so different. I think that they sort of so non-overlapping. His whole optimistic space. Well, I guess you're a bit more optimistic these days, but certainly your whole pessimistic space is basically just a fragment of his, and that's an interesting thing. Two, I think it's interesting that you cover, will scaling be enough to actually start to dig into when we have, and the timelines themselves being important, that you think alignment takes time. The more time we have, probably the better in your mind, though probably not everyone will agree. No one ever all agrees. And then this notion of kind of there's very little turning back. Not none, but very little turning back. The key question is when do we get to the point where sort of 90% or 95% of the timelines from this point all conclude kind of where we can't change where we're going.
Exactly.
And I think that's a genuinely interesting thing. And that, it doesn't necessarily matter what things are like 10 or 20 years after that point. It really matters 100 years after that point. And, it might turn out that from that point, 10 years on, we can predict exactly where we're going to lead in 100 years. You can sort of say the game is up. No more goals are going to be scored. And that, I don't know, that's not something I'd given huge amounts of thought to. So
but it's interesting, and it's worth
allow you final comments. Yeah.
No, I love this.
What
you're doing is brilliant. I was actually waiting to see this website come up so I could share with all my friends. I hope all my friends have their own models up here. And I think it's important that we place our predictions down, make concrete predictions, and then if people are surprised in either direction, we should update accordingly, in a few years, if it turns out that,
Yeah.
I think this is a great thing you're doing. And I'm so glad to be one of the first few people.
Oh, thank you so much. I think you've probably got to head off. So thanks so much for your time, Aditya, for writing this. And Aditya was one of my early sort of testers, so you've just been really helpful. And, I hope you're wrong.
I hope so too.
Even 60% is truth. But thank you for your intellectual honesty, and thank you for sort of staring into the abyss a bit. And problems are solvable. Let's go solve this thing. Thank you very much for your work.
Have a good day, Nathan. Bye.